Hi, I'm Chris Gonman, creator of the Basic Fantasy role-playing game. Recently, Jose Kercado, a friend of the project, posted a video on YouTube talking about the things he took with him to games, to run games as a game master, specifically Basic Fantasy. He showed a flip-top tote, about yay, like that, with which he carried all of his stuff from place to place to run games. Pretty cool. I am far too lazy to carry that much weight. So since I'm getting ready to start a new campaign tonight with some new players, and for the first time in more than 2 decades, I'm going to be running regular games away from this, my regular table, I had to put together a bag of stuff to take with me. Now, I had a little advanced preparation because I did go to QuinCon this year, and I had a bag that I had come up with to carry all my stuff there. I just reorganized the contents somewhat, and I'm going to show it to you. This is a cast-off Hewlett-Packard laptop bag. I work with computers for a living, so I'm exposed to this kind of stuff on a regular basis. The laptop was no good. The customer said to get rid of it. He didn't want the bag back, so I kept it. Inside the bag, I have, of course, my Basic Fantasy rule books. Specifically, I have a paperback, a hardback of the 3rd edition, both, and a copy of the field guide, should I need it. I printed my adventures for the night. Now, I've got several adventures because I'm using background material from them, and I'm not sure where exactly things are going to go. I've got a pretty good idea, but not exactly. I have J.D. Neal's Chaotic Caves. I have a couple of adventures from our Adventure Anthology 1. I'm specifically going to be using Beneath Bramacin tonight. And I brought a copy of my Morgan's Fort. If you look at my forum, I've got an ongoing thread there where I'm discussing how I'm fitting these adventures together and putting together a coherent Western Lands campaign out of the mixed up materials, some of it written for Western Lands, some written for Blaine, some written for various people's home games. We have a lot of different sources of material, and I'm going to work them all together and make one campaign out of them. As I said, this is my QuinCon bag, so I still have my flyers in there that I have at the table to hand out. I got some clipboards. Back to school time is wonderful. Clipboard full of 1/4-inch scrap paper, 4 squares to the inch, and a clipboard full of notebook paper. I got these clipboards because, unlike my old clipboards, I got a bunch of the old-fashioned ones. These will actually fit in the bag and not tear anything up. Finally, I have a player character folder. This is actually the folder I used at the very first convention I went to. It's been laying around unused for quite a while. It has printed copies of equipment lists, name lists to help people out. Particularly, I have the Dragon's Foot book of names printed out in here, along with a handwritten list from an old friend from years ago, and some blank character sheets. Obviously, no player characters yet because no one's generated for this game. That's it for my printed materials, and not yet printed materials. Put this all back in here. I recommend when you load the stuff into a bag like this, you put the spine edge in first. Much less likely to tear the cover up if you do that. Zip this up. Now, obviously you need more than just printed materials to run a game. That's what this other pocket's for. In here I have, well, number 1, my chainmail dice bag. This is full of dice that were property of my old friend Alan. He passed away a few years ago. Still missed at my table and always will be. I have a regular set of dice I use for my regular game. It's in the other box with my other game materials. Materials I use for the game I have here at home. My regular player group who come to my house every couple of weeks and play in my regular game all have 2nd edition game books. So I keep my 2nd edition game book and other game materials for that campaign in a separate box, and I bring it out when I play here. There's very little difference between the 2nd and the 3rd edition. It's just more convenient for me to have the same edition as my players so I can tell them what page number things are on. This group of players for tonight, on the other hand, all have 3rd edition materials that I think they all have 3rd edition materials that they picked up at various convention appearances or bought for themselves. These are metal dice. They're my player dice. I'm not going to use them tonight. I use them only when I play. They're a gift from my daughter. And, of course, lots of pencils and wet erase markers for use on my battle mats. I have two. There's a smaller old one wrapped up inside this large one. So this is what I take with me to a game. I've also got things like older QuinnCon badges and so forth that I still have lying around. Lots of lanyards in case I need one. Sometimes they don't have a regular lanyard available. And finally, as you notice, I'm using a battle mat with wet erase markers. I customarily use miniatures at my table. My players have metal miniatures, either their own or I have a box of miniatures that are mine that they pick out of if they need to. Kind of 50-50 as to whether they have their own or whether they borrow off of me, and that's fine. From my side of the table as the game master, most of the time I'm using Steve Jackson Games Cardboard Heroes figures. I got some of the original sets way back when they first came out. I've still got them. They're still in usable condition. They're a little fragile though. I don't like to take them places with me, and they have to occupy a pretty good sized box. So when I go to conventions, and now I'm going to this game, I don't use them. Instead, I use these. These are good old-fashioned ordinary pennies that I have painted. If you paint pennies with spray paint, you can treat them like a wet erase board. You can wipe them off and wipe off whatever's printed on them, with wet erase markers, obviously. So I take these with me, and as we are playing, if someone needs a figure, if a monster needs a figure, or whatever, I can take one out, wipe it off if I need to, and mark it up appropriately for whatever they happen to be needing. Came with this idea for miniatures, using pennies as miniatures a couple years ago at QuinnCon, because I just really like to have miniatures. Why do I like miniatures? I'm going to digress a little bit off of what I take to games with me, just to talk about that briefly. For the first 10 and 15 years of my gaming experience as a game master, I ran games Theater of the Mind. I didn't have a battle mat. I didn't use miniatures, figures, or markers of any kind. And it worked pretty well most of the time, but there are a few exceptions. In particular, I discovered that, let's say for the moment we find a room with a chest in it, and naturally the thief goes to the chest to check for traps and then pick the lock and then steal whatever's inside. If the thief picks the lock, opens the chest, and finds a vast treasure with something really nice on top of it, and he decides to pocket the really nice thing for himself, there's always a player looking over his shoulder. Always someone to notice it. But if he unlocks the chest, opens it up, and a cloud of poison gas comes out because he failed to detect the trap, suddenly there are no players anywhere near the thief. Now that's not reasonable. Either you are behind the thief watching to see if he steals something from the party, or you're standing clear of the dangerous trap. You can't be both. Using miniature figures of some kind, markers, pennies, whatever, on a battle mat in real play works really well to keep people from doing that kind of nonsense. And I have good players. I have honest players, players that I have a lot of faith in and a lot of trust with. I walk away from the table with my game materials lying there, and just flipped over, but lying there right at my chair. I never expect anyone to peek. As far as I can tell, no one ever has. I've got good players. But we're all a hero of our own story, and certainly when we're playing a hero, we want to be the hero of that story. And actually the hero's nowhere near the trap when it goes off, but always there to see when something nefarious happens. Doesn't make sense. So this way, I keep everybody honest with me and with themselves. And it doesn't just apply to the thief cracking a chest. It could be you're walking down the corridor and you're ambushed out of a secret door by some orcs. Magic users in the middle of the party. Well, no, of course the cleric was standing right next to him to protect him. Was he? Where was the cleric? By doing this with miniatures, again, I give a marching order. We know where everybody is. They actually lay their figures out in marching order when they're not actually on the battle mat. And we can tell where everybody is and what the situation is and who might be affected by a surprise attack or a trap or whatever. I can figure out which player characters to check in order to see which one trips the pit, falls in, quite easily with a marching order laid out that way. So it just cuts down on confusion, it cuts down on uncertainty, and I like to do that. I like to not be uncertain as much as possible. I like to keep the game moving. Good morning. It is now the day after the game. My recording yesterday morning was interrupted by the battery in my camera running down, so I had to start over today, or rather start in the middle. So let me finish up yesterday first. One last thing that I hadn't showed is my tablet. I am not the kind of person who has to have technology in his hands all the time, which may seem strange for somebody who works with computers for a living, but that's just how I am. I'm not a gadget person. But the tablet is indispensable for a couple of things. Number one is a calculator. Back in the day, I kept a scientific calculator in my pocket. Back in high school, which was a very long time ago, I kept a scientific calculator in my pocket all the time. If I needed to add up experience points and divide them between the player characters, it was not a big deal. Just had that handy. My tablet does that job now. Yes, my phone can do calculations, but I'm old, my vision's not great, the larger screen's pretty good. So that's what I've got the tablet for, the primary reason. The secondary thing is, if you're familiar with the Basic Fantasy Project, if you're familiar with our website, you may know we have a number of tools, in particular handy things like a dungeon room generator, which can be used to stock a dungeon on the fly. We have a treasure generator, which I can use to generate a random treasure of any of the standard treasure types, or I can call out the specific tables for different magic items, or just say magic and get a random magic item. I used the tablet for that last night. I had 5 player characters. I had already assisted one player in getting his character generated. My intention was to start them around 2,800 experience points plus bonuses for being human or half human. And I used the treasure generator to generate the treasures, the magic items for the other 4 characters. I just generated 4 of them. Didn't like the first set, ran it again. In fact, I ran it twice before I got a set that looked like something I could distribute between the remaining 4 characters. And I went ahead and did that. Passed out, and basically I told them I got 1 magic weapon. Who wants it? And the players argued very briefly, surprisingly briefly, before distributing it. 2 shields and a potion. Is how we distributed last night. The character who had already been generated had a magic bow, and that's all he had, which is actually a pretty rare item, but he had played that character a couple of times before in a different game and had gotten the bow more or less fair and square, so I let him keep it. So anyway, that was the start of things last night. Didn't need the pennies, did need my tablet for, I didn't need the pennies because Rob, the guy who provided us the apartment in which we played the game, he's a very good host, has a very large collection of plastic miniatures. And I had him, picking them out for me. At one point, they walked in a room with 5 orcs. I said, "Give me 5 orcs," and he dug up 5 orcs for me. At another point, I just had him hand me the box with kobolds in it because I didn't want them to know how many there were in the room until they walked in. But I knew I was going to need them, and they knew what was in they knew that kobolds were in the room, so that was the easiest thing to do. As far as printed materials, there was one thing I missed in yesterday's video, the first half of this video. The Glane supplement, Glane Companion supplement, which contains the specific set of house rules that I use in my game. Now, I've mentioned this on the forum before, but I'm just going to explain really briefly. I do not allow compilations of house rules on the downloads page for the Basic Fantasy Project. I don't do this for anyone, including myself. My Glane supplement can be found in the showcase, which is distinctly less official. Anything that appears on the downloads page has the blessing of myself and the other project leaders. It is considered good for general purposes, reasonably balanced, probably okay. And the supplements on the downloads page are very narrowly focused. 1 class normally, there's only one that has 2 classes, Rangers and Paladins are in 1 supplement together. Most of them are just 1 class or 1 race. The half-human supplement does have 3, but they're all basically half-humans, and because of the similarities in the rules for half-humans, I went ahead and put them in 1 supplement. Still, tightly focused supplements where a game master can say, In setting up a game, I'm using the core rules, and we're using half-humans, gnomes, illusionists, druids, combat options, and thief options. And the players print those particular supplements and be ready to jump into the game and start playing. So, I found that I was using the same bunch of supplements over and over again. I decided to just put together my own house rules document, put it in the showcase where people can get to it. It is not official. It's just how I play the game at my table. It allowed me to pick a few things from the Magic user options. I don't really like everything that's in there, but there are a few things I liked, and I wanted to include them in my regular home game. I call it the Glane Companion because it's basically the house rules we're using for Glane, so even though I'm running Western Lands, I'm using the same house rules. I think I've covered most everything that has to do with what I took to the game last night. I do want to thank the guys for a really interesting session, a really enjoyable start, a lot of laughing, a lot of people not taking themselves too seriously, which I think is always good in a role-playing game. It was a really good time. Looking forward to it. We'll be back together in 2 weeks for our next session, and I'll be taking this bag back with me. Well, I guess that's all for now. Thanks for watching the video, and have a nice day.